It was a hot, sticky afternoon on a lonely highway. The sun was big and bright, like a giant yellow ball in the sky, and it made everything feel sweaty and gross. Dust flew up in little clouds, swirling in the air like tiny tornadoes, as a yellow taxi rattled along the road. The taxi was old, with chipped paint and squeaky wheels, but it kept moving, bumping over rocks and cracks in the pavement. Inside, it smelled like old leather seats and cheap air freshener, the kind that's supposed to smell like pine trees but doesn't really. In the back seat of this rickety taxi sat a man. Just one man, all alone. His name was Daniel Reed, or at least, that's what his ID said. He didn't look special. Not at all. He wore a plain gray suit, the kind of suit you might see on someone who works in a boring office, answering phones or typing on a computer all day. The suit was a little wrinkled, like he'd been sitting in it for too long, and his tie was just a tiny bit crooked. His hair was short and neat, but not fancy. His shoes were black and shiny, but not the kind of shiny that makes you think, wow, this guy is important. No, he looked ordinary. Plain. Like a nobody. Daniel sat quietly, his hands resting on his lap, holding a small black briefcase. He stared out the window with calm, steady eyes, watching the dusty road stretch out in front of the taxi. The world outside was empty, just sand, rocks, and a few scraggly bushes that looked like they hadn't seen rain in years. To anyone watching, Daniel looked like the most boring man in the world. Just some regular guy, maybe on his way home after a long, tiring day at work. Maybe he was a guy who sold paper clips or fixed copy machines. That's what you'd think if you saw him. That's what everyone would think. But here's the thing, looks can trick you. Looks can lie. And Daniel Reed? He wasn't what he seemed. Not even close. Up in the front seat, the taxi driver was a guy named Mike. Mike was the chatty type, the kind of person who likes to talk to everyone, even if they don't talk back. He had a big, round face with a scruffy beard, and he wore a faded baseball cap that said "Go Team" on the front. Mike liked his job, even if the taxi was old and the roads were bumpy. He liked meeting new people, hearing their stories, and making them smile. But today, his passenger wasn't making it easy. Mike glanced at Daniel in the rearview mirror, the little rectangle of glass above the dashboard. He could see Daniel's face, calm and blank, just staring out the window. Mike cleared his throat, trying to break the silence. "Rough day, huh?" he said, his voice loud and cheerful. He grinned, hoping Daniel would say something back, maybe tell a funny story or complain about his boss. But Daniel didn't. He just nodded, a tiny little nod, his face still blank, like a stone wall with no cracks. Mike blinked, a little surprised. Most people talked to him. Most people liked to chat, especially on long, boring drives like this. But not this guy. Okay, quiet type. Got it, Mike said, shrugging his shoulders. He turned his eyes back to the road, humming a little tune to himself. He didn't mind quiet passengers, not really. Everyone's different, right? Some people just want to sit and think. No big deal. But what Mike didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Daniel Reed wasn't just a quiet guy. He wasn't just some boring office worker with a wrinkled suit and a briefcase full of papers. Oh, no. Daniel Reed had secrets. Big secrets. Secrets that could make your jaw drop to the floor. Secrets that could change everything. Outside the taxi, the road stretched on, long and empty. The sun beat down, making the air shimmer like a wavy mirror. It was the kind of day where nothing exciting was supposed to happen. Just a taxi, a driver, and a passenger, rolling along through the middle of nowhere. But excitement? It was coming. Trouble. It was coming, too. And it was coming fast. Far behind the taxi, a low rumble started to grow. It was faint at first, like the buzz of a bee, but it got louder and louder, like thunder rolling across the sky. It was the sound of engines, big, loud engines, roaring like a pack of angry wolves. A gang of bikers was speeding up the highway, their motorcycles shiny and black, with flames painted on the sides. There were 5 of them, all wearing leather jackets with skulls on the back, the kind of jackets that say, "Don't mess with me." Their helmets were scratched and dented, and their faces were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but you could tell they were trouble just by the way they moved, fast, loud, and fearless. These bikers weren't nice guys. They weren't out for a friendly ride in the sun. No, they were looking for fun, but their kind of fun was the bad kind. The kind that makes other people scared. The kind that makes other people run. And when they saw the yellow taxi rattling along the road, all alone, they grinned big, mean grins. To them, the taxi looked like an easy target. A boring taxi with a boring driver and, probably, a boring passenger. Easy pickings, right? Wrong. Oh, so wrong. Those bikers. They were about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. They were about to find out that the man in the gray suit, the man they thought was a nobody, was actually somebody. Somebody big. Somebody dangerous. But they didn't know that yet. Not even a little bit. Inside the taxi, Daniel's calm eyes flicked to the side mirror. He saw the bikers coming, their motorcycles kicking up clouds of dust behind them. He saw the way they swerved and laughed, like they owned the road. But Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't frown. He didn't even blink. He just sat there, calm and steady, like a statue made of stone. Mike, on the other hand, wasn't so calm. He heard the engines, too, and his eyes widened in the rearview mirror. Oh, great, he muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Bikers. Just what we need. He glanced back at Daniel, hoping for some kind of reaction, but Daniel didn't give him one. Hey, don't worry, okay. Mike said, his voice a little shaky. They'll probably just pass us. Probably. But Daniel knew better. He knew the bikers weren't going to pass. He knew they were trouble, and he knew they were coming for the taxi. And deep down, in a quiet, hidden part of his mind, Daniel was ready. Ready for whatever came next. The bikers caught up fast. Really fast. 1 minute, the road behind the taxi was empty, just dust and heat. The next minute, there were 5 big, loud motorcycles zooming up, their engines growling like a pack of hungry dogs. The sound was so loud it made the windows of the taxi shake, and the air filled with the smell of gasoline and hot metal. The bikers were big guys, tough guys, the kind of guys who think they can do whatever they want. They all wore black leather jackets, shiny and tough, with big white skulls painted on the back. The skulls had mean, grinning faces, like they were laughing at the world. The leader of the bikers was the biggest and loudest of them all. His name was Spike, and you could tell just by looking at him that he loved trouble. Spike had a scruffy beard that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks, and his teeth showed in a mean, nasty grin, the kind of grin that makes you want to run away. His sunglasses were dark, hiding his eyes, but you didn't need to see them to know he was up to no good. Spike rode his motorcycle right up close to the taxi, so close that Mike, the driver, could see the dirt on his jacket. The other 4 bikers followed Spike's lead, copying everything he did. They laughed and shouted, their voices loud and rough, as they swerved their bikes around the taxi, making it wobble on the road like a toy car about to fall over. Hey, taxi man! Spike yelled, his voice booming over the roar of the engines. He banged his fist on the side of the taxi, hard, leaving a dent in the yellow metal. What's the hurry? Got a fancy passenger back there. His words were mean, teasing, like he was looking for a fight. The other bikers laughed, their laughter sharp and cruel, like a pack of bullies on a playground. Inside the taxi, Mike, the driver, was scared. Really scared. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, and little beads of sweat started to drip down his forehead. He didn't like bikers. Not these bikers, anyway. They weren't the friendly kind who wave and ride away. No, these guys were trouble, and Mike knew it. Just leave us alone, okay? Mike shouted back, trying to sound brave, but his voice was shaky, like a leaf trembling in the wind. But the bikers didn't leave. They didn't listen. They just laughed harder, their laughter echoing across the empty highway. One of them, a skinny biker with a red bandana tied around his head, sped up his motorcycle and cut right in front of the taxi, so close that Mike had no choice but to slam on the brakes. The car screeched to a stop, the tires squealing like a scared animal, and the whole taxi jerked forward. Inside, Daniel's briefcase slid off the seat and thumped onto the floor, but Daniel didn't move. He didn't jump. He didn't gasp. He just sat there, calm and still, like nothing had happened. Spike saw his chance. He rode his bike right up to the taxi's window, so close his elbow almost touched the glass. He leaned in, staring at Daniel, who was still sitting quietly in the back seat. Spike's mean grin got even bigger, showing his yellow teeth. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice low and mocking. "Look at this guy. Mr. Boring in his ugly suit." He pointed at Daniel, and the other bikers roared with laughter, slapping their knees and howling like they just heard the funniest joke in the world. "What's in the briefcase, huh?" "Your lunch," Spike said, pointing at the black case on the floor. The bikers laughed even louder, their voices bouncing off the rocks and sand around the road. To them, Daniel looked like an easy target. Just some guy in a wrinkled gray suit, the kind of guy who probably spent all day in a boring office, counting paper clips or fixing broken printers. They thought he was weak. They thought he was scared. They thought he was a nobody. But they were wrong. So wrong. Daniel didn't say a word. Not one word. He just looked at Spike, his face calm, his eyes sharp, like a hawk watching a mouse. Most people, when they get yelled at or laughed at, they get mad or scared. Their faces turn red, or their hands shake, or they look away. But not Daniel. His face didn't change. His hands didn't move. He just stared back at Spike, steady and quiet, like a rock in a storm. But inside, deep inside, something was waking up. Something strong. Something dangerous. Something Spike and his gang didn't see and didn't expect. Spike didn't notice the look in Daniel's eyes. He didn't notice the way Daniel's fingers twitched, just a tiny bit, like they were ready for action. Spike was too busy laughing, too busy being mean. He kept going, his voice loud and cruel. "Come on, man. Get out of the car. Let's have some fun," he shouted, banging on the taxi again, harder this time. The other bikers cheered, revving their engines, making the air shake with noise. They wanted Daniel to get out. They wanted to scare him, to push him around, to make him feel small. That's what bullies do, right? They pick on people they think are weak. Inside the taxi, Mike was starting to panic. His heart was beating fast, like a drum in his chest, and his hands were slippery with sweat on the steering wheel. He turned to Daniel, his eyes wide, and whispered, "Look, man, I don't want trouble. Maybe you should just, I don't know, give them something." His voice was quiet, almost a squeak, like he was afraid the bikers would hear him. Mike didn't want a fight. He didn't want to get hurt. He just wanted to drive his taxi, go home, and see his family. But Daniel? He wasn't scared. Not even a little bit. He didn't look worried or nervous or upset. Instead, he did something small, something simple, but something that showed he wasn't like other people. He reached up, slow and steady, and adjusted his tie. That's it. Just adjusted his tie, like he was getting ready for a meeting, not facing a gang of mean bikers. Then he turned to Mike, his voice low and quiet, but strong, like a deep river. "Don't worry, Mike," he said. "I'll handle this." Mike blinked, confused. "Handle this? Handle what?" There were 5 big, tough bikers out there, all laughing and shouting and banging on the car. They had chains and crowbars and mean, nasty grins. And Daniel? He was just one guy, in a wrinkled suit, with a briefcase that probably held nothing but papers. How could he handle anything? But what Spike and his gang didn't know, what Mike didn't know, was this: every insult, every laugh, every threat was pushing them closer to a disaster they couldn't imagine. Every mean word they said, every fist they banged on the car, every cruel laugh they let out, it was all building up, like water behind a dam, ready to burst. Daniel wasn't just a guy in a suit. He wasn't just a quiet passenger. He was something else. Something more. And soon, very soon, the bikers would find out exactly what that something was. The bikers circled the taxi like sharks swimming around a little fish. Their motorcycles roared and growled, kicking up clouds of dust that swirled in the hot, sticky air. The noise was so loud it made the ground shake, and the smell of gasoline stung the nose. The taxi sat still, trapped in the middle of the circle, like a rabbit surrounded by wolves. The bikers weren't just riding around for fun, though. Oh, no. They were playing a mean game, a bullying game, and they wanted to scare the people inside the taxi. They wanted to feel big and strong by making others feel small and weak. One of the bikers, a skinny guy with a long, shiny chain dangling from his belt, stopped his motorcycle right in front of the taxi. He had a mean look on his face, like a kid who likes to pull wings off bugs. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crowbar, a big, heavy metal stick that could smash things. He tapped it on the hood of the taxi, making a loud, scary clang. "Come on, suit guy," he shouted, his voice high and nasty. "Get out, or we'll drag you out." He tapped the crowbar again, harder this time, leaving a little scratch on the yellow paint. Spike, the leader, smirked, his mean grin growing wider. He cracked his knuckles, making a loud popping sound, like firecrackers going off. "Yeah, let's see if Mr. Boring can fight," he said, his voice low and rough, like gravel crunching under boots. "I bet he cries like a baby." The other bikers laughed, their laughter loud and cruel, echoing across the empty highway. They thought Daniel was weak. They thought he was scared. They thought he was nothing. But they were wrong. So wrong. Inside the taxi, Mike, the driver, was sweating bullets. His face was shiny with sweat, and his hands were slippery on the steering wheel. His heart was beating fast, like a drum going boom 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 in his chest. He didn't like this. Not one bit. He didn't want to be here, stuck on a lonely road with a gang of mean bikers. He just wanted to drive his taxi, go home, and eat dinner with his family. "Look, man," Mike said, turning to Daniel in the back seat, his voice shaky and quiet, "I got a family. I can't deal with this." His eyes were wide, like a scared puppy, begging Daniel to do something, anything, to make the bikers go away. But Daniel? He wasn't scared. Not even a little bit. He didn't look worried or nervous or upset. Instead, he leaned forward, slow and steady, like a cat watching a bird. His voice was low and calm, like a deep, quiet river. "Stay calm, Mike," he said. "They'll be gone soon." Mike blinked, confused. His mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. "Gone," he said, his voice squeaky with surprise. "How?" "There's 5 of them, and they've got weapons." He pointed out the window at the skinny biker with the crowbar, who was now tapping it on the taxi's hood even harder, making a loud bang bang bang. Mike's eyes darted to the other bikers, who were revving their engines and shouting mean things, their voices mixing with the roar of the motorcycles. "They've got chains and crowbars and they're big and mean. How are they gonna be gone?" Daniel didn't answer. Not with words, anyway. Instead, he did something strange. Something unexpected. He reached down to the floor of the taxi, where his black briefcase had fallen when the car stopped so fast. He picked it up, slow and careful, and set it on the seat next to him. Then, with a soft click, he opened it. Mike leaned over, trying to see inside, his eyes wide with curiosity. What was in there? A gun? A knife? Something to scare the bikers away? But no. Daniel didn't pull out a gun or a knife. He pulled out a pen. Just a plain, black pen. The kind of pen you use to write a grocery list or do your homework. It wasn't shiny or fancy. It wasn't big or scary. It was just a pen. Mike stared, his mouth dropping open. "A pen," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "What are you gonna do, write them a letter?" He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a nervous laugh, the kind of laugh you make when you're scared and confused and don't know what else to do. Daniel didn't laugh. He didn't frown. He didn't even blink. Instead, he smiled for the first time, a small, dangerous smile, like a fox who knows a secret. "Something like that," he said, his voice low and steady, like a whisper in the dark. He held the pen in his hand, turning it over in his fingers, slow and careful, like it was something special, something important. Mike blinked again, even more confused. A pen? Really? How was a pen going to help? The bikers had crowbars and chains and big, loud motorcycles. A pen was nothing. A pen was silly. A pen was useless. Right? But here's the thing, that pen wasn't just a pen. Oh, no. It was something else. Something more. Something the bikers didn't expect. And Daniel? He wasn't just a guy in a suit. He was something else, too. Something big. Something dangerous. Outside, Spike was getting impatient. He didn't like waiting. He didn't like being ignored. He wanted action. He wanted fun, his mean, nasty kind of fun. "All right, that's it," he yelled, his voice booming over the roar of the engines. "Drag him out." He pointed at the taxi, and the other bikers cheered, their faces lighting up with mean, excited grins. They wanted to see Daniel scared. They wanted to see him cry. They wanted to push him around, like bullies on a playground. The skinny biker with the crowbar jumped off his motorcycle and stomped over to the taxi. He grabbed the handle of the back door and yanked it open, hard, making the whole car shake. "Get out, suit guy," he shouted, waving the crowbar in the air, his voice high and nasty. The other bikers revved their engines even louder, making the air shake with noise, like a thunderstorm rolling in. But what happened next? It wasn't what anyone expected. Not Spike. Not the skinny biker. Not even Mike. Daniel stepped out of the taxi, slow and calm, like he was stepping out of a car to go to the grocery store, not facing a gang of mean bikers. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He didn't shake or cry. He just stood there, tall and steady, holding nothing but that plain, black pen. His suit was still wrinkled, his tie was still a little crooked, but his face was calm, his eyes sharp, like a hawk watching a mouse. The bikers laughed even louder, their laughter echoing across the empty road. "Oh, wow," Spike said, wiping tears from his eyes, his voice full of mean, mocking joy. "This guy's gonna fight us with a pen? This is too good." The other bikers howled, slapping their knees and pointing at Daniel, like he was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. To them, he looked silly. He looked weak. He looked like an easy target. But here's the thing, that pen wasn't just a pen. And Daniel? He wasn't just a guy in a suit. The bikers were about to find out why judging people by their looks is a very, very bad idea. They thought they were the sharks and Daniel was the fish. But maybe, just maybe, Daniel was the real shark and they were the ones in trouble. The bikers thought they had won. They thought they were the big, strong sharks, and Daniel was just a little fish, easy to catch and easy to scare. Spike, the leader, was the meanest of them all. He stood there, tall and tough, with his leather jacket and his mean, nasty grin, thinking he was the king of the road. He grabbed Daniel by the collar of his gray suit, his big, rough hands yanking Daniel up off the ground like he weighed nothing. "Say goodbye, suit guy." Spike snarled, his voice low and growly, like a dog ready to bite. His sunglasses slipped down his nose, showing his mean, squinting eyes, full of anger and pride. He thought this was the end. He thought Daniel was done for. But then, in a flash, everything changed. Everything flipped upside down, like a magic trick no one saw coming. Daniel didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. Instead, he moved his hand, the hand holding that plain, black pen. He twisted the top of the pen, just a little twist, and suddenly, a tiny red light blinked on. Blink, blink, blink. It was small, but it glowed bright, like a firefly in the dark. Spike froze, his mean grin fading. His eyebrows shot up, and his mouth opened, just a little. "What the?" he started to say, his voice confused and shaky. He didn't understand. What was that light? Why was it blinking? What was going on? But before Spike could finish his sentence, before he could even blink, Daniel moved. And oh, he moved fast. Faster than a race car. Faster than a cheetah. Faster than anyone thought a guy in a wrinkled suit could move. In one smooth motion, like a dancer spinning on a stage, Daniel grabbed Spike's arm, the arm that was holding his collar, and twisted it, hard. Spike let out a loud yelp, like a dog whose tail got stepped on, and before he knew it, he was on his knees, his face in the dirt, his arm twisted behind his back. The big, tough biker leader was down, just like that, and Daniel didn't even look like he was trying hard. The other bikers gasped, their mean laughs turning into shouts of surprise. The skinny guy with the crowbar, the one who had been tapping on the taxi's hood, saw his chance. He thought he could be the hero for his gang. "Get him," he shouted, his voice high and angry, as he lunged forward, swinging the crowbar like a baseball bat, aiming right for Daniel's head. But Daniel was ready. Oh, he was so ready. He didn't run. He didn't duck. He just flicked his wrist, the wrist holding the pen, and something amazing happened. A thin, shiny wire shot out of the pen, fast as lightning, with a quiet zing sound, like a bee buzzing by. The wire wrapped around the skinny biker's legs, tangling them up like a lasso catching a cow. The biker tripped, his arms flapping in the air, and down he went, face first into the dirt, the crowbar flying out of his hand and landing far away with a loud clang. The other three bikers didn't know what to do. Their mouths dropped open, their eyes wide, like they'd just seen a ghost. But then, they got mad. Really mad. "Get him," one of them shouted, a big guy with a chain wrapped around his fist. "He can't take us all," yelled another, a short guy with a red bandana. They charged at Daniel, all three of them at once, their boots stomping the ground, their fists raised, their faces red with anger. They thought they could win. They thought numbers would beat speed. They thought Daniel was still just a boring guy in a suit. But they were wrong. So wrong. Daniel was ready for them, too. He moved like a superhero, like someone out of a movie. He ducked under the big guy's swinging chain, so fast the chain missed him by a mile. Then he spun around, kicking the big guy's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground with a loud thud. The short guy with the bandana tried to grab Daniel from behind, but Daniel twisted away, smooth and easy, like he was dancing. He tapped the guy's shoulder, just a little tap, but somehow, the guy fell over, groaning and holding his arm, like Daniel had done something secret and strong. The last biker, a guy with a leather vest and a mean scowl, pulled out a big, heavy wrench, the kind you use to fix a car. He swung it hard, yelling, "You're done, suit guy." But Daniel didn't flinch. He just stepped to the side, calm and quick, and the wrench missed him completely. Then, with one fast move, Daniel grabbed the biker's wrist, twisted it, and pushed. The biker dropped the wrench, fell to his knees, and stayed there, groaning in pain. In less than a minute, just a few seconds, really all five bikers were on the ground, groaning and moaning, covered in dust and dirt. Spike was still on his knees, his arm twisted behind his back. The skinny guy was tangled in the wire, trying to wiggle free but failing. The big guy, the short guy, and the wrench guy were all lying flat, holding their arms or legs, their faces twisted in pain. The mean, tough bikers, the ones who thought they were the kings of the road, were down. And Daniel? He was still standing, calm as ever, holding nothing but that pen. Inside the taxi, Mike, the driver, stared with his mouth wide open, like a fish out of water. His eyes were so big they looked like they might pop out of his head. He couldn't believe what he'd just seen. 1 minute, the bikers were big and scary, shouting and laughing, ready to hurt everyone. The next minute, they were on the ground, beaten by a guy in a wrinkled suit, a guy with a pen. Who are you?" Mike whispered, his voice soft and shaky, like he was afraid of the answer. Daniel adjusted his tie again, slow and steady, like he was getting ready for a meeting, not standing in the middle of a dusty road surrounded by beaten-up bikers. His face was calm, his eyes sharp, like a hawk who just caught his prey. "My name is Daniel Reed," he said, his voice low and strong, like a deep, quiet river. "But my real job? I'm a CIA operative." He pointed the pen at Spike, who was still on his knees, his face pale, his mean grin gone. "And you," Daniel said, his voice cold, "you just picked the wrong guy to mess with." Spike's face turned pale, whiter than a sheet of paper. His mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. "CIA," he said, his voice squeaky and scared. You're kidding, right?" His sunglasses fell off completely, showing his wide, scared eyes, the eyes of a bully who suddenly realized he wasn't the biggest kid on the playground anymore. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, he pressed a button on the pen, the same pen that wasn't just a pen. A loud beep echoed through the air, sharp and clear, like a whistle in the quiet. Seconds later, the sound of helicopter blades filled the sky, a loud thwump 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 that made the ground shake. A big, black chopper appeared, hovering above the road, its shadow dark and wide, like a giant bird blocking out the sun. Men in suits, black suits, shiny and neat, dropped down on ropes, fast and smooth, landing all around the bikers, surrounding them like a net. Take them in, Daniel said, his voice cold and strong, like a teacher telling kids to go to the principal's office. They'll think twice before harassing innocent people again. The men in suits moved fast, grabbing the bikers, pulling them to their feet, and tying their hands behind their backs. The bikers didn't fight. They didn't shout. They just groaned, their heads hanging low, their mean, tough act gone, washed away like dirt in the rain. Tom doesn't wait around. He grabs a tiny radio from his pocket real fast. "Help, come now," he says into it. Boom, just like that, loud sirens scream from far away. The bikers try to run, but nope, it's too late. Big black cars zoom up with flashing lights. Men in cool suits jump out and grab the bikers, putting handcuffs on them. Spike, the mean one, yells, "We didn't know." Too bad for him. The taxi driver looks at Tom with big eyes. "You're CIA?" he asks, amazed. Tom nods and jumps back in the cab. "Let's go," he says, super calm. The driver smiles big and drives off fast. The road gets quiet again. But everyone who saw it? They'll always remember Tom, the secret hero. Okay, listen up. Tom seemed like a regular guy, just sitting in a taxi. But guess what? He had big, secret power no one knew about. The bikers thought he was weak. Oops, big mistake. They got in trouble fast. It makes you think, huh? Sometimes, the quiet people are the strongest ones. Next time you see someone getting teased or picked on, stop and wonder, what's their story? Maybe they're hiding something cool. Thanks for staying with me, you're awesome. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were Tom? Catch you in the next story.